Welcome to the Carbon Copy Podcast Running Out of Time special. I'm Isabel Sparrow, and as the official podcast hosts for this year's event, we are excited to bring you even more inspiring stories of action for climate and nature from along the route in this second episode. If you'd like to join us for the whole journey, please do subscribe to hear the episodes as soon as they land. Since we last met, the baton has travelled down the West Highland Way, carried by intrepid runners and cyclists for over 100 kilometres, finally reaching the outskirts of Glasgow on Saturday morning, and by early afternoon it reached Hamiltonhill Claypits local nature reserve. The Claypits are one of the projects being supported by the Nature Neighbourhoods programme, so here's Rory Crawford, who heads up the programme for the National Trust, to explain more about it.
My name is Rory Crawford. I am the project manager of a project called Nature Neighbourhoods. So I do that for the National Trust, but it's a partnership with the RSPB, with WWF, and with 18 community organisations up and down the country. And it's supported by National Community Fund and Cooperative. So that's kind of my day job. That's what I do most of the time. And then some of the rest of the time, I moonlight, I guess, as a television and radio presenter, mainly for children's TV. So I've worked in CBeebies for about 10 years doing various programmes, but most recently one called Teeny Tiny Creatures, with my good friend Chantel Lindsay. And yeah, involved in sort of other sort of local activism as well. So I'm running a campaign locally to improve active transport provision and road safety in our neighbourhood, and also do a bit of work with Parents for Future Scotland, which is a parents activist group on climate change. So I think those are the things that I do. I'm also a dad, and that takes a lot of time as well. So I think play dad and working for Nature Neighbourhoods are like 90% of my life, maybe close to 100%. Part of the Nature Neighbourhoods project, one of the community organisations we're working with is Hamiltonhill Claypits Local Nature Reserve Management Group. Before I was working on the project, I'd been to Hamiltonhill during lockdown. I used to go and, we weren't allowed to go out and meet friends. I went and met a friend and walked around Hamiltonhill because it opened during that period. And it's an amazing transformation, really. So I'm really familiar with the area. I used to live sort of that part of Glasgow, so I know the area well. It's amazing to see, it's gone from what folk call a coup or a dump into a nature reserve on the canal, which is amazing. So yeah, it's just a total transformation, and it's amazing to see, loads of folk using it, loads of people up there. Like, it's a really inspiring place and a really great example of the sort of what we could have in any number of cities, and what we could have for any number of communities, like a beautiful green space really close to the city centre that is there for everyone. I think it's probably fair to say that Nature Neighbourhoods is a lot about having a truly strong and sort of fair relationship between big conservation organisations and smaller community organisations. I think it's probably fair to say that the conservation organisations have been good at lots of things, like science and policy and advocacy and managing big, amazing nature reserves out in the countryside, but haven't been great, I don't think, at building community and working at a community level in cities and towns in particular. That's not true of everyone, everywhere, obviously, but if we look at the overall pattern, big NGOs have not been great at doing that work within cities around nature. And we've got a lot to learn from community organisations that do it at the community level. And of course, community organisations tend to be focused on the things that communities want and see as priorities. And I think a big historical issue there in that dynamic is that big organisations come along with a sort of best practice idea of how you do these things and try to impose it upon people. There's something in the scientific method there that's about like, we know best and we'll show you the way to do it. And of course, very quickly, somewhere like a city or a town, you bump into the issue that if people don't care about it, if it's not important for them and you don't take them, involve them in that decision making, involve them in how things get done, it's not going to be sustained. So the idea is to kind of, I think, bridge that gap and recognise the things that those two sort of elements of that system are good at and support each other to do it.
We'll hear more from Rory in just a moment, but now to the nature reserve itself, where our producer Brad recorded this chat with Julianne Levitt and Bob Alston recently.
My name is Bob Alston. I'm the vice chair of the Hamiltonhill Claypits Local Nature Reserve.
My name is Julianne Levette and I am the Community Development Manager. It's a green space that everyone can use, the whole community can use, so people come far and wide and use it for various things. But my main aim is to get everyone to use it within a community because it was built for them.
So it does two things, right? It brings a lot of communities together that previously had been cut off because below us is the Forth and Clyde Canal. And part of the nature reserve, we put a bridge across the canal. That made it easy for people from Mary Hill, which is down below, and Postle, which is up above, for people to get to know each other, which they couldn't do before. So it's connected communities. And the nature reserve's in what was considered a very bad area. And we found the total opposite. The people have been wonderful here. And they've accepted us. They've accepted the nature reserve. We had a litter pick last Sunday, and we had about 30 volunteers out. And the one thing we couldn't find was litter. So the people, as I say, not only accepted it, they take care of the place. It's changed this community entirely.
There's so much here for everybody. It's not just a nature reserve, there's a lot more to it. We're award winning, we've won a few awards for the nature reserve as well. So it's just a lovely place to be. And when you're in the nature reserve, you wouldn't realise you were in the middle of a city centre, middle of Scotland. So we were approached through Nature Neighbourhoods to ask if the relay race could run for the Claypits. And of course we're delighted to accept, because one thing we want to do is raise awareness of the Claypits and also raise awareness for climate change and also be part of the process of our Nature Neighbourhoods project as well. So it's good to show that we're doing something and the community can be part of it as well. And then hopefully if it's a successful day and it's a beautiful day like today, then they'll do it every year and it would be really good to be part of that going forward. So what they're doing is they're coming in through one of the entrances of the Claypits, which is Applecross. They're going to come up to this spot, which is the viewpoint, and then we're going to cross the bridge and we have a big massive slide, which is the biggest slide in Glasgow, and hopefully everybody can get a shot go down the slide. So that's how the day will run, and hopefully we'll have people coming to support everyone coming through it as well.
When we opened the Claypits, one of the things they had to do when they were building it is they had to cut down about 300 trees. So what we did is that we got in touch with all the local schools and nurseries, and we got trees from the Woodlands Trust, and we've planted 1,000 trees in here. And it was so gratifying to see nursery kids, people from university, people from just normal life coming in helping us do that. And that was our way of getting people to know about us and know about what we stood for. And our first year, it helped us to get to know the community.
The children who come onto the Claypits, they look after the site. So we encourage them to look after nature, look after the place, because if you don't get them at an early age, they'll not do it. So a lot of the nursery kids, we're doing the projects with them where they're coming out to do pond dipping, to do various activities. It's fun for them, but it's an education at the same time. We mentioned earlier about the tree planting. So what we did do was we basically got little labels, so biodegradable labels, where the children wrote their name and their school on it. And what they were to do was basically put that on a tree that they planted, and then they were to watch their tree grow through the seasons, and they were to then report what leaves they had, if it had berries, or how much it had grown, or how it looked, or if the deer had eaten their tree, and then educating them on that. And we'd ask them to basically look after that. So they then sent pictures. So little John was back with his bike and he was looking at his tree, and here's the pictures and things like that. So we were showing them how to look after nature and how the importance of it is. So we think that's important. That's what we're doing, to try and get them at an early age, because if we're getting them at age 3 and 4, then we're doing sustainable activities and projects with them, then hopefully that'll be something they'll learn going forward.
It's lovely to hear how this initiative is helping to engage the next generation with nature. The relay baton is carrying a message in support of the Climate Coalition's United for People, Climate and Nature campaign, which calls for commitment to cut emissions, restore nature and support the hardest hit at home and around the world. With the finale of the event taking place on polling day on the 4th of July, I asked Rory how people can ensure whoever they vote for will make this commitment to nature in particular.
nature's not a nice to have, and it's not just the magic. It's not just the sort of John Clare poetry world of nature. It's also like just fundamental to our existence. Like, we are nature. It is clean air. It is food. It is water. It is fundamental to our existence. Like, and I think that is the start of the conversation with anyone who might be wanting to get into Parliament. How will you stand up for the thing which is our essence, which is us, that keeps us going? You know, the economy doesn't exist if we don't have clean air and water and food that we are producing in a sustainable and sustained way. So that is the thing that I think about in terms of framing. And part of the reason that I think it's not tended to be in the political agenda is it's like nature's over here as a separate thing and not as the fundamental underpinning to our society, to our very existence. And that's the reframe that needs to happen. So I think when there's a conversation about it on the doorstep, really, you know, if you're speaking to elected official, you know, prospective candidates, or you're at a hustings or whatever it is, ask that question about how do we build that into how we run economies? How do we build that into how we run the food system? How do we make it like the fundamental building block of how we run society, rather than a nice thing over here that we try and look after? Everyone spent way too much time on that, you know, including the nature conservation sector. It's felt like we spent too long on it as a separate thing. It's not separate. It's like the very basis of our existence. So approach the conversation with that gravity, and approach the conversation with that perspective. And the more that people hear that, the more that we talk about it in those terms, the more that you know, we find practical ways of building it in, which I think more people are thinking about now. I think the more compelling the case.
If you'd like to hear more about Hamiltonhill Claypits Local Nature Reserve or about the Nature Neighbourhoods programme, check out the show notes to links for further information. Back to the relay now, and after an event at the Claypits, the baton was picked up by Jen O'Brien, founding director of inclusive music social enterprise Music Broth. Here she is speaking to Harry from the relay crew following her leg.
So Harry from the relay crew here with Jem from Music Broth. So you've just finished your 13 and a bit K?
Yeah.
So how do you feel?
Great. I mean, it was quite humid, and Pollokshaws Road was a very long road, like a long straight road. But I really enjoyed the bit from the Claypits along the canal. That was gorgeous.
Oh, nice. Okay. And sort of what I know is like, why are you doing this sort of relay? What's your sort of involvement? And
I'm just really passionate about people getting involved in talking about climate change and in any ways we can mitigate against climate change. I think is a really important subject, and I think it's a really great demonstration to show that you can move something the whole length of the country without using any fossil fuels and without using any, you know, external power on our bodies.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
And then is there any particular issue that's like really close to heart for you?
For me, well, I run Music Broth as a musical instrument library, and we're all about saving instruments from landfill. So we prevent instruments from, going back into the system, in landfill, and also prevent people from buying new instruments as well. So other metals and so on getting dug up from the ground. So we operate as a sharing library. People donate instruments to us, which is amazing, such generosity. And we get them out to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to play music. So it's a real social aspect too as well, social justice and community. We just want people to be creative and able to express themselves in any way that they can.
We love the sound of Music Broth. It's a great example of a project that's making people's lives better in lots of ways and has the added benefit of being better for the planet too. If you'd like to discover more stories like this, do visit our collection of 1,000 climate action stories on Carbon Copy. The link is in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Carbon Copy podcast Running Out of Time special. And thanks also to all the guests we spoke to. This episode was written and presented by me, Isabel Sparrow. The producer and editor was Bradley Ingham. Additional recording on this episode by the Relay crew, Harry, Rohan and Rasheen. We'll be back with our next episode from the Relay very soon. Bye for now.